I never meant to stay that long. Honestly, I just came over to fix the loose cabinet door, maybe tighten a few screws, and then leave before things could get awkward. But I should have known better, because nothing ever feels simple around her. She opened the door with that half-smile that never quite reached her eyes, the kind of smile that said she wasn't expecting anyone but wasn't surprised either. She had a way of carrying herself, even in small things. Bare feet, hair tied back without trying, a worn sweater hanging loose on her shoulders. And still, she looked untouchable. I cleared my throat. "Your cousin said you needed help with the hinge." Her eyes flickered, almost amused. "Ah, so he sent you instead of showing up himself." I shrugged, pretending it didn't sting that she'd rather someone else had come. "Guess I'm the replacement." Her kitchen smelled faintly of coffee gone cold. Papers scattered across the table, a lamp burning low though it was barely past noon. She gestured toward the cabinet, and I went to work. Screwdriver in hand, I focused on the hinge, on the wood, on anything but the weight of her presence standing behind me. The silence pressed in. It wasn't empty silence, more like a silence that knew it was being listened to. "You always help people out like this?" she asked finally, her voice soft but steady. "Not really," I muttered, keeping my head down. "Just depends who asks." That earned the smallest laugh from her, quiet, private. I didn't look up, but I could feel it. That sound stayed in the air longer than it should have. When I stood, the cabinet fixed, I brushed dust from my hands and turned, too quickly. She was closer than I expected. Close enough that I caught the faintest trace of her perfume, something subtle, not sweet, more like the kind of scent that lingers in a coat after winter walks. "You're handier than your cousin," she said, looking at me, not the cabinet. Something in her tone landed heavier than the words. I didn't know what to do with it, so I laughed, but it came out thin. "Guess I should add kitchen repairman to my resume." Her eyes lingered on me a fraction too long before she turned away, reaching for the mug of coffee she'd abandoned. She lifted it, hesitated, then set it back down without drinking. I should have left. That was the perfect out. Job done, quick goodbye, nothing left behind. But instead I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, pretending I had another reason to stay. "You always drink your coffee cold?" I asked. She tilted her head, almost smiling again. "Sometimes. Saves me from finishing it too fast." That answer wasn't really about coffee. Or maybe I just wanted to believe it wasn't. Her cousin's words came back to me suddenly, echoing in a way I couldn't shake. "Let's see who you choose." I hadn't thought much of it at the time, just a careless joke tossed around at a family gathering. But standing there in her kitchen, that line felt like a dare I'd already started answering without realizing it. Her hand brushed against mine when she moved past, light as a mistake, but neither of us pulled back fast enough. The air stilled between us. My chest tightened, waiting for her to say something, anything. She looked at me then, really looked, steady, unblinking, as if she was trying to measure the risk. And finally, she said the one thing that made it impossible to leave. "Do you even know what you're doing here?" Her question hung in the air, sharp, direct. "Do you even know what you're doing here?" I should have laughed it off. I should have said I was just here to fix a cabinet, nothing more. But the way she leaned against the counter, arms folded across her chest, waiting for me to answer, made it impossible to dismiss. "I don't know," I admitted, surprising even myself. "Maybe not." Her gaze softened for a second, then flickered away. She pressed her fingers to her temple as if she'd said too much by even asking. The silence stretched. I tried to focus on anything else, the chipped edge of her mug, the low hum of the fridge, the soft light filtering through the blinds. But my eyes kept dragging back to her. The way her sweater slipped off one shoulder, the fine lines near her eyes that only made her look more human, more real than anyone else I'd been around lately. "You shouldn't feel like you owe me anything," she said finally. "Your cousin asked for a favor. That's all." "Yeah," I said, though it didn't feel like just that anymore. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve, twisting the fabric until it stretched. vulnerability peeked through in small ways. I caught it, even if she didn't want me to. I thought of what I knew about her life, whispered pieces, scraps overheard when family gathered. The breakup. The divorce papers not long ago. The way her name was always said with a mix of sympathy and something sharper, as if everyone was waiting to see how she'd land after falling so far. And yet, here she was, not broken, not fragile, but guarded. Guarded enough that the thought of being the one to slip past those walls terrified me. She poured herself fresh coffee, steam rising, though she didn't drink it. Just held it between her palms as if for warmth. "Can I ask you something?" I said before I lost my nerve. Her eyes narrowed slightly, curious. "Go on. Do people ever stop reminding you?" She tilted her head. "Reminding me of what?" "Of the past. Of mistakes. Of things you'd rather forget." Her lips parted, but no answer came. Instead, she let out a slow breath and set the mug down with a soft clink. "No. They don't? Not really." Something in her voice cracked there, subtle, but enough to make my chest tighten. She wasn't just talking about herself anymore. I wanted to say more, to tell her that she wasn't alone in carrying things she wished she could undo. That I saw her, not as everyone else did, but as she was right then, standing in front of me. But the words jammed in my throat. She reached past me suddenly, her hand grazing my arm, light, deliberate, not an accident this time. "You don't have to go yet," she said, her voice quieter now, almost fragile. And I knew in that moment, leaving wasn't an option anymore. Her words stayed with me. "You don't have to go yet." They sounded casual, almost offhand, but nothing about the way she said them felt casual at all. Her hand still rested on my arm, warm through the fabric, and I couldn't think of a single excuse strong enough to step away. Instead, I stayed. She moved back to the table, shuffling the scattered papers as if to give her hands a job, but I could tell her focus wasn't on the words printed there. Mine wasn't either. I leaned against the counter, every muscle tense, caught between wanting to close the space and forcing myself to stay still. "People talk, you know," she said suddenly, her voice too light to be comfortable. "Your cousin. The family. They'd have opinions." I swallowed hard. "They already do." That made her laugh, but there wasn't much humor in it. She pressed her thumb to the corner of one page, dragging it along the edge until it nearly tore. The little movement said more than her words. She was fraying at the edges, too. I wanted to tell her I didn't care what anyone thought. That the way she looked at me mattered more than anything outside that kitchen. But before I could speak, her phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the heavy air. The screen lit up. His name. I didn't need to ask who, it was obvious. The ex. The one who still haunted her in ways no one dared to mention. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Her hand hovered above it, frozen. "Are you going to answer?" I asked quietly. She looked at me, eyes wide and uncertain, and shook her head. The phone stopped ringing. Silence rushed back in, heavier than before. I tried to steady myself, to pull back from the edge I felt slipping toward. "She's older. She's been through more. You don't belong in this." But the more I told myself to retreat, the more my eyes betrayed me, following the way her hair fell loose from its tie, the way her sweater hung too wide at the collar, the way her lips pressed together like she was holding something back. She caught me staring. For a moment neither of us moved. Then, without warning, she whispered, "You shouldn't look at me like that." The words should have stopped me cold. They should have been a boundary. But the way she said them, it wasn't warning. It was confession. I opened my mouth, reckless, ready to admit what I hadn't dared to say out loud, when a knock rattled the front door. Sharp, unexpected. We both jumped. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me. She didn't move, didn't answer the knock. Whoever it was, they knocked again, louder this time. I took a step closer to her, not toward the door. My voice came out lower than I intended. "If you don't open it, does that mean?" I stopped myself. The words hovered between us, unfinished, dangerous. Her breath caught. And for the first time, she didn't look away. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it began, leaving only the echo of it in the walls and the tight silence that followed. She stood frozen by the table, her hands pressed flat against the papers as though bracing herself, her breathing shallow. "Are you going to check?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She shook her head once, sharp. "If it's important, they'll come back." I nodded slowly, but the air between us had shifted, thicker, heavier. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I should have stepped away, created space. Instead, I found myself moving closer. "You didn't want to answer the phone," I said, my voice lower now, almost careful. "And now the door. It's like you're shutting the world out." She looked at me, and for once there was no guardedness, no practiced calm. Just exhaustion. Maybe I am. Maybe the world's already had enough of me. The words hit harder than she intended, I think. They cracked something open. I saw it, the tiredness in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped for just a moment before she straightened again. "You really believe that?" I asked. She let out a dry laugh, shaking her head. "What does it matter what I believe? People already decided who I am. Failed marriage, failed career. Some days I feel like I'm just a cautionary story people whisper about when they think I can't hear." Her voice trembled at the end, and it stopped me cold. Vulnerability wasn't something she gave away easily, and now that she had, I couldn't pretend not to see it. "You're not that," I said firmly. "You're not." Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. The silence stretched, fragile and electric, and I realized I'd stepped even closer without noticing. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. "I do." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "I've known since the first time I saw you, and I've tried to push it down, tried to make it go away, but it doesn't. You're not the story they tell. You're the one I can't stop." I broke off, biting back the last word. Thinking it was one thing, saying it out loud was another. Her hand twitched against the table, then lifted halfway, as if she might reach for me, and then faltered, curling into a fist instead. She searched my face, her eyes darting between mine like she was trying to read every unspoken thing I wasn't saying. "This is wrong," she said finally, her voice hushed. "We shouldn't." But she didn't finish. She didn't step away either. I swallowed hard. My hand brushed the edge of the table, close enough to hers that the space between our fingers felt like fire. "Then tell me to leave," I said. Her breath hitched. She didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just held my gaze, locked in a silence so heavy it said everything words couldn't. And in that silence, the question burned louder than anything else: if either of us stopped it now, what would happen next? The silence between us stretched until I thought it might break me. Her eyes were steady on mine, her lips parted as if she was right at the edge of saying something, and then the sound came again. Not a knock this time, but a ding. A notification. Her phone lit up on the table. I didn't want to look, but my eyes betrayed me. One name, bold across the screen. My cousin. For a second, everything tilted. She glanced at the phone, then back at me, and I saw it, the flicker of guilt, the quick calculation behind her eyes. She didn't move to pick it up. She didn't even try to explain. "You've been talking to him," I said quietly. Not a question. Her jaw tightened. "He checks in sometimes. After everything with the divorce, he thought it would help." I let the word sink in. My cousin, his voice in my head again. "Let's see who you choose." It hadn't been a joke, had it? He'd known. Or suspected. Maybe he'd even pushed me here. And she hadn't denied it. "You should have told me," I said. Her hands pressed flat against the table again, knuckles white. "I didn't think it mattered." "It matters to me." That came out sharper than I meant, and she flinched. I dragged a hand through my hair, turning away, trying to steady my breath. "He knew. Or at least he wanted to know. And you, what were you doing? Letting him test me?" "No," she said quickly, stepping closer. "It wasn't like that. He He's worried about you. He thinks you get too caught up in things. That you don't know when to walk away. The words cut, but not the way she meant. Because the truth was, he wasn't wrong. I didn't want to walk away. Not from her. I turned back, and she was closer now, her expression raw, stripped of the calm she wore like armor. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said softly. I didn't mean for you to happen. My chest tightened. She wasn't pretending anymore. Not hiding behind jokes or silences. For the first time, it felt like I was seeing her, not the woman the family whispered about, not the shadow of her past, but the person standing here, breaking just enough to let me in. I don't care what he thinks, I said. My voice was rough, shaking. I don't care if the whole world talks. I'm here. Right now. With you. Her breath caught, her eyes searching mine as though she was trying to believe me, trying to let herself believe. For a moment, I thought she would close the space between us. But then the phone buzzed again, louder this time, insistent. We both looked at it, glowing like a signal either of us wanted to answer. Her hand hovered over it, trembling, and she whispered, almost to herself, "If he already knows, what are we about to do?" The phone kept buzzing between us like a warning bell, each vibration louder than the last. She stared at it, her hand hovering as though picking it up might sever something fragile in the air. "Don't," I said, more sharply than I intended. Her eyes flicked to mine, startled, searching. "And if I don't? What does that mean?" "It means—" My voice faltered. I tried again, softer this time. "It means we stop letting everyone else decide what happens here." Her lips pressed together, and for a long moment she said nothing. The only sound was the relentless buzz, then silence when the call finally cut off. The screen went dark, leaving just the two of us in the dim kitchen. She stepped back, pressing a hand to her forehead. "You don't understand. If this," she broke off, shaking her head. "It doesn't just change today. It changes everything. Your cousin. My family. People already think I've ruined enough." I took a step toward her, my chest tight. "Then let them think it. Let them talk. I can live with their voices. I can't live with never knowing what this could be." The confession ripped out of me before I could take it back. I expected her to recoil, to shut down, to remind me of all the reasons this was impossible. But she didn't. Instead, she let her hand drop slowly from her forehead, and when her eyes met mine, they were wet, shining. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to want something you're not supposed to want?" I swallowed hard. Every second I'm standing here. Her breath caught, half laugh, half sob, and then the distance between us dissolved. She didn't run into my arms, didn't collapse in some cinematic embrace. She just stepped forward until we were close enough that I could feel her warmth, close enough that I had to fight the urge to close the final inch. "Say it," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. "If you mean it, say it." I didn't look away. "I want you." The silence that followed was heavier than any words. She didn't pull away. She didn't answer right away either. But the hand she had been clenching at her side finally lifted, trembling, and found its way to my chest. Her fingers curled in the fabric of my shirt, not pulling me closer, not pushing me back, just holding on. "I don't know where this leads," she said, voice breaking. "I don't know how we survive it." "Then let's not think about survival," I murmured. Just this moment. For a breathless instant, it felt like the whole world narrowed to that single point of contact. Her hand on my chest, my heart pounding against her palm, both of us suspended at the edge of a choice we couldn't unmake. And in that silence, neither of us moved away. Her hand stayed on my chest, and for a long, fragile moment, neither of us breathed. The world outside that kitchen, the family whispers, my cousin's suspicions, the past she carried like a weight, none of it existed. Just us. And then she exhaled, her shoulders sagging as if she'd finally surrendered to something she'd been holding back for years. "You shouldn't make promises you can't keep," she said softly, her voice breaking around the edges. I shook my head. "This isn't a promise." It's the truth. Whatever happens next, I don't regret this. I won't. Her eyes closed briefly, as if my words cut deeper than I intended. When she opened them again, there was no guard, no mask, just her, raw and unhidden. Do you know how long it's been since I let myself want something, want someone without shame? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My hand lifted almost without thought, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the touch, the smallest shift, but enough to break what was left of the distance between us. It wasn't a perfect kiss. It wasn't rushed or wild either. It was careful, almost reverent, as though we both understood the gravity of finally stepping over that line. When we pulled back, our foreheads still touching, the silence was no longer heavy, it was steady. The phone on the table lit up again. Neither of us looked. Neither of us moved. For the first time, the world outside could wait. Later, as I walked out of her house into the cool evening air, I felt the weight of what had changed. It wasn't just about longing anymore, or the forbidden thrill of what we weren't supposed to want. It was about choice. We had chosen this, messy, complicated, and real. I knew there would be consequences. My cousin's words, "Let's see who you choose," would come back around. People would talk. Whispers would follow. But the difference was, for once, I wasn't afraid of them. She had shown me something no one else ever had, that the past doesn't define you unless you let it, and that wanting, truly wanting, someone isn't weakness. It's courage. And maybe that was the quiet lesson in all of this. Sometimes the people we're warned away from, the ones painted as mistakes or dangers, are the very ones who see us most clearly. And sometimes, the hardest choice, the one that risks the most, is the only one that sets you free. As I reached the end of the driveway, I turned back. She was still standing in the doorway, arms folded against the frame, watching me go with that half-smile I'd seen 100 times before, but tonight, it was different. Tonight, it reached her eyes. I smiled back. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I was doing here. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? Redheart, what kind of stories would you like to hear next? More forbidden love, second chances, or unexpected confessions?